So I'm the kind of kid whose mission their entire life has been to decide exactly what they'll do for a living. First, I wanted to be an inventor, then a veterinarian, then an architect, and I just kept pinballing back and forth between different career paths until I eventually settled on programming. But it wasn't love at first sight. My first experience with coding was at a software engineering college class. It was a 2-week course, and in the first week we learned how computers have evolved and how they store information. And then in the second week, we went over C++, and it was awful. I mean, I learned a lot from the whole venture, but I didn't know what I was doing in that second week. But then, in the following year of school, our IT class went over Visual Basic, which is much easier. And my entire perspective on coding changed. I mean, all of a sudden, all those concepts I had learned were applicable, and I felt like an expert. So, 2 years later, I returned to the same software engineering class, and this time, things are a lot clearer. But what I've remembered most from this is that this was the point at which I realized I had a chance of figuring out what makes a computer tick. And one of those things I've figured out since that day is just how big of a role balance plays in the ticking. But there are really two reasons I want to talk about computers today. And the first is because of this graph. This chart represents Moore's law, which states that every 2 years, the number of transistors on a silicon chip will double. Now, a transistor, such as this, is an important component that back in 1950 used to be as big as a salt shaker. So if you want to make something like a calculator, it had to be as big as your freezer. But in the last 4 decades, these things have gotten so small that you don't even notice them. And it shows just how fast technology is progressing. But as our tools get more sophisticated, we understand less about them. And that needs to change. My second reason for talking about computers today is because we could learn a lot from the balancing techniques they use on their own and across the internet. To do that, though, we really need to get inside the mind of a machine. So let's say that you open an application. When you do, a whole bunch of data starts getting transferred all throughout the computer. Your processor then takes this data and turns the binary nonsense into important things like pictures of your cat or a fun custom program. But what you should know is that your processor can only focus on one task at a time, and yet your pictures are still loading like, oh. Your pictures still load like this and not like this, normally. And the trick is, while it may seem like these threads are running simultaneously, they're actually rotating so that your computer can get a taste of each process before anything is fully executed. And that's why we have things like buffering and estimated loading time. And this same kind of processing is done across a much larger scale known as the cloud. Rather than regulating these individual threads, you're deciding how much computer capacity each user needs. So if Alice is playing a high graphics-intensive video game with lots of explosions and gunfire, while Bob is editing a Word document, the two of them can share the same computer power because their capacity needs are cooperable. And just like how if we have more cloud computers, we have a better chance of fitting in those users' needs, the more opportunities we have in life, the greater chance we have of finding where our passions and ambitions can fit together. Another great feature of the cloud is how it stores all of your digital stuff in a bunch of different locations. This is what's known as redundancy. The great thing about redundancy is it means that all of your stuff is safe, even during the apocalypse. And humans could use a little redundancy because, well, maybe you've got your life figured out. Maybe you know exactly what your goals and objectives are and how you're going to achieve them. Well, you know what? Life's not fair. And sometimes you're not going to be able to achieve those goals and those objectives. Maybe you're better off not having all your eggs in one basket. Because if you completely devote yourself to just one passion and that passion fails, you're screwed. So rather than doing that, balance may not be able to keep us from failing, but it sure does increase our chances of success. So here we can see 2 ways to improve our lives and broaden our horizons. And really, that's what balance is all about. As a creative myself and a person who likes to see something as they're building it, I never imagined myself sitting at a computer all day writing gobbledygook. But programming isn't just a mindless task. It forces you to come up with creatively efficient new ways of solving new problems. And technology itself is beautiful because it sparks creativity in all of us. And if we were to just take the time to learn and practice these methods that make computers and other machines so amazing, just imagine how amazing we could be. Thank you.